Today I'm going to show you something that is absolutely nuts. But first, let me set the stage. Can you believe that we've now asked, I think like 3 times, how likely is it that Joe Biden profited from his son's business deals with companies in China? 60% say likely, by the way. But not even once have we asked about Taiwan in our entire polling history. Now, it isn't negligence. The fact is that China wasn't always seen as the United States' enemy by Americans. I'll link a video in the YouTube description if you want to know more. But at the start of Trump's presidency, only 15% of likely voters saw China as an enemy of the United States. But now 48% do. So we asked a progression of questions about whether likely voters would support an escalating set of actions as a response to a theoretical Chinese invasion of Taiwan. First up, sanctions. Americans overwhelmingly support them, 79% in fact, and 60% strongly support them. Only 12% are opposed. Here are the party numbers. Complete bipartisan support, though Democrats are a little less likely to strongly support them, but more on that later. Now I'm going to show you Biden approval numbers on this one, and please take note. This is one of the only places I've seen voters who strongly approve of Biden and those who strongly disapprove of Biden agree on anything. But this is especially paradoxical because Biden's strong disapprovers overwhelmingly see China as our enemy, 74%, but only 25% of Biden's strong approvers agree. Next up, the Navy. 64% support using it, but now only 34% strongly support it. That's down from 60% for sanctions. 23% oppose using the Navy to defend Taiwan, up from 12% from sanctions. Here are the party numbers, and again, pretty much bipartisan support. But now I'm going to show you age to get a benchmark for something you'll see later. Middle-aged voters and voters over 65 support the Navy getting involved much more than 18 to 39-year-olds, and only 23% of younger voters strongly support it. Now, part of this is that younger voters are less likely to see China as an enemy, but hold that thought. Next up, the Air Force, and the numbers are pretty close to the numbers for the Navy, but here are the party numbers, and for the first time, cracks are starting to appear. 67% of Democrats are in favor of providing air support to Taiwan, but only 59% of independents and 62% of Republicans, though Republicans are more likely to strongly support. And now we're at the last one, ground troops. And this is where Americans clearly start to draw a line. 43% of voters support sending troops to Taiwan to defend it from China, but only 17% strongly support it. 46% of voters are opposed. Now, these numbers are the lowest on the list by a lot, but Americans are essentially split, which is actually higher than I thought, considering there are some pretty recent examples of the drawbacks of getting engaged in a direct military conflict. Now, keep in mind that almost half of American voters think China is our enemy, and only 11% say it's an ally. But I think there's more going on here than just that. Before I get to party numbers, I said I'd come back to age. In all 3 previous questions, 18 to 39-year-olds were least in support of the retaliatory action. But here they're actually most in favor, which is stunning, considering their age group would be doing the fighting. And yes, this signal is also driven a little bit by men. But here's party. 40% of Republicans and 38% of independents support getting our troops involved, but a plurality of Republicans oppose, and a slight majority of independents. But here's the kicker. Democrats support sending troops to defend Taiwan by a 52% to 37% margin. But let's take another look at Biden approval. 57% of those who strongly approve of Biden support getting our troops involved in defending Taiwan, the most of any other demographic, and only 35% are opposed. Meanwhile, a majority of those who strongly disapprove of Biden oppose boots on the ground in Taiwan, while just 36% are in favor. Now, stepping back, these numbers tell me that Americans are, by and large, ready to take some considerable actions to defend Taiwan from a Chinese invasion. For some perspective, last year when Russia was massing troops on the Ukrainian border, only 31% of voters wanted our troops involved militarily. But what is fascinating to me here is that it is now Democrats, specifically Democrats who strongly support Joe Biden, who are driving the war signal. And note, it isn't necessarily those who self-identify as liberal. Only 42% of liberals support boots on the ground to defend Taiwan, compared to the, again, 57% of those who strongly approve of the job Joe Biden is doing. But of course, with 42% of liberals supporting troops in Taiwan, it also looks like the liberal peace signal is kind of dying. In fact, only 47% of liberals oppose troops, almost exactly the same as the 45% of conservatives who oppose troops. So maybe conservatism is picking up the slack for world peace. But isn't this whole thing crazy? Whether you support U.S. troops defending Taiwan from China has nothing to do with whether you call yourself a conservative or a liberal, and is almost entirely due to whether you think Joe Biden is doing a good job in office. And what's even crazier is that those most likely to want us engaged in a war with China are, like I said earlier, actually least likely to even see China as our enemy. I have absolutely no credible explanation for this. And so I would challenge you, if you're still watching, to give me one in the comments. Public opinion in America is strange, and it's getting weirder. Wait until you see our Nikki Haley-Joe Biden hypothetical 2024 matchup on Thursday. Subscribe and follow us on YouTube so you don't miss it, and thanks for watching.